Hi guys, so today I want to talk to you. I am from Syria. I want to tell you what they teach us at school, what I've been taught at school, and then I'm going to tell you two fun stories that happened between my family and Jews of Syria, Syrian Jews. So at school, I remember it very well. I was taught because I studied part of my childhood in Canada, and then when I was 11 years old we came to Syria, we came back. So we studied that Zionism is not the same as Judaism, and that Judaism is a religion, and that Semites or Semitic people, it's who we are, as Arabs, and that there's no difference between Arabs and Jews because we're all Semites. And we were taught that there's a clear difference, like I said, between Zionism and Judaism, and that our enemy is the ideology of Zionism. So now I'm going to tell you two fun stories. I'm going to have to say also that for those who don't know, 30% of the population is also Christian, and we have Armenian Syrians who hold the Syrian passport. So just like me, they hold the Syrian passport. They are Syrian citizens, and they are not second-class Syrian citizens. No, they are Syrian citizens just like me, equal to me, even though they came from Armenia and took refuge in Syria when I think the Turkish committed genocide against them. So anyways, now I'm gonna tell you two fun stories that my parents tell. First, there's one about my grandmother's tailor. So that's what my mother told me. Back at my grandmother's time, when she was alive, you couldn't buy ready-made clothes. You had to buy fabric, and then you give the fabric to the tailor, and they make clothing with it. So the tailor, the merchant who sold the fabrics, he was a Jew, Yeah, sorry, it's not the tailor, it's the merchant who sold her fabric, not the tailor. He is a Jew. He was a Syrian Jew. And we never ever referred to someone as a Jew. We would say, he's this person, because to us, like I said, Judaism is not a race. It's not a different race. So my mother said that my grandmother loved him so much because she would buy so many clothes from him, pieces of fabric, and then he would tell her, if you don't have all the money, you can pay me later. You can pay part of what you're gonna pay now. You don't have to pay in full. You can pay it later. And she never ever had to pay extra for paying later, because like in credit cards, I don't know what the name of this, but I can't remember it now. But when you charge your credit card with money, you have to give them more money, give them back to the bank more money, because you took money, you loaned money, they loaned you, sorry. So this is not what that Jew did. He would tell her, you can buy the amount at your own pace. You don't have to pay the whole amount now. And so she would do that, and he wouldn't mind even if she was a bit late, like even if it took her some time. He wouldn't mind it at all. And the thing is that when I heard that, I was like, yeah, I know, Mom, I know, because this is something that happens to me too. It's not strange, because it happens many times that sometimes if I'm paying a huge amount of money, they tell me, if you don't have if you don't have that money, you can pay me later. Or if he sees me, like, it's not if it's a huge amount of money, that wouldn't be logical. I mean, I'm not gonna buy a car or a mobile phone and not pay the whole price. Yeah, that's different. Oh, and by the way, I asked my mom, so why would he do that? Did he know her from before? Like, because usually people who do that, usually but not always, it happened to me that one pharmacist once told me you can pay later even though he didn't know me or saw me before. So, but usually it's because they know me. Not because they know me personally, but because they see me. I mean, in the neighborhood often, they see me going through those streets every day, walking my dog. So it happens that sometimes they would say, if they see me not paying immediately or looking into my pocket or bag for a long time or something, they would say, if you don't want, you can pay us later. If you don't have money now, you can pay us later. It's okay. And that's because they know that I come every day to this place or by this street. I walk by this street every day. But it also happened to me once that a pharmacist, I told him, oh, I don't have enough money on me now, so I'm not gonna take this. And he said, I told him, I'll just take these two, not this one. And he said, no, you can take it and you can pay me later. I told him, really? You don't know me though. Die. And I told him, it's okay. And he told me, it's okay. Do you live too far? And I said, no, I don't. Yeah, so if you are to ever visit Syria as a foreigner, you're gonna know what I'm talking about when I say people here are very generous. I mean, we were taught at school that Arabs were known for their generosity and their hospitality, but that's not, I hear people say, I don't know personally, people say that. It's not like that everywhere in Arab world, like some places in, like near Morocco, I don't know, Algeria, I'm not sure. People say that they're not as generous or hospitable, but that's only what I hear other people say. I've never been there. Yeah, if you want, you can check Drubinsky. He's a Jewish American, and he came to Syria for a visit. He stayed for 2 weeks, and he documented it. And I really, really, really think you should watch it because it's really fun and entertaining. Yeah, Thailand. And yeah. So the other thing that I want to share with you, another story, is that my mother's cousin, he would play often as a kid. He would often play in the Jewish neighborhood because we had a neighborhood for Jewish. They called that. I mean, we're mostly Jewish people who lived there. So, and on Saturday, he would you come, and when he would come, they'd ask him, could you please ignite the fire for us so we can cook, the stove, because you need to ignite the stove, and the reason was that on Saturday, they have a religious tradition of they are prohibited from igniting fire. So on Saturday, they can't do that. So they would tell him, come and ignite the fire for us. And in exchange, they would give in regard to what happened to Syria during the proxy war. But which we still go through now. We're going through it, but it's true that they said in the documentary that there is only one Jewish family left in Syria, and they interviewed that family. They still have a store, handmade orientals, like glass and painting on glass, and then there's, I can't remember the name of the other thing. So now in this video I told you two stories that I really think they're fun, and they just show that Syrians have always been part of our culture. Jews, Syrian Jews. And it's really, really strange to think of a religion, of a group of religious people as as a race. Okay, sorry, I can't really focus when I'm walking, but I feel much better when I'm talking, when I'm making a video while walking, so I'm still gonna do it. Even though sometimes I could be repeating myself without noticing. And also, another thing I want to say, I remember now. So I read an article entitled, it's on LinkedIn, it's titled The Khazarian Mafia, so KH with a Z. So it's Khazarian. The Khazarian Mafia. Okay, tai. So the title is The Khazarian Mafia. You don't know what you don't know. So I really think you should type this if you want to know more. Type this title in Google. The Khazarian Mafia. You don't know what you don't know. So that's the title. And in that article, they said that scientists have studied the genes of Palestinians, and they've analyzed or studied the genes, it's called, the genes of Israeli settlers, and they found that 80% of the genes of Palestinians, including Muslims, are Semitic or Semite genes, Semitic genes, I think it's called. Whereas when they analyzed the genes of Israeli settlers, they found, I think, 2 or less than 2% of their genes being Semitic, having Semitic genes in them. So that goes to show how this Khazarian Mafia is a bunch of imposters, faking identity. Not only that, my president used to always say, I remember him saying, we are Semites, so how can we be anti-Semites if we are Semites ourselves? The world should listen to my president. I really think he's a wise person. And I think people should listen to what Syria has to say. Even that article is about a guy who it's about a guy who said he said that I think this article was recited or like read in Syria, Damascus, even though the guy is American who did this research on the subject. And I think it's because he feels safer here talking about that. Anyways, I'm really happy that the truth is coming out now and that people are uniting. I think even though what's happening is very sad, but there's a positive thing about it, and that is that it's uniting us together. It's bringing us together, and it's going to make me want to go back to Canada or to any country in the West and live there, because although I have a Canadian citizenship, I chose to live in Syria because I found that the system in the West is even more corrupt than in Syria. How every system goes on to function is it functions in a more corrupt way than in Syria. Because at least in Syria, okay, or in any corrupt country, if you pay a lot of money, you can make something happen, you know. But in a country where only regulations rule, because you know sometimes laws are not good, they have been put there to limit us, and deliberately, you know, to limit us and to make our life more difficult instead of making it easier. Laws and regulations should be there to make our life easier, not harder, not more limited. And unfortunately, such rules exist everywhere, such rules and regulations, but what's even worse is that the control of the state, the control of the corrupt American and European government, and its ability to implement such regulations, such corrupt regulations, is even stronger. The hold of the government and its corruption is stronger on its people than in Syria. Like I said, in Syria, like if you gotta pay money to make something, like if to get over a certain obstacle, a certain regulation that's too formal, you know, that's been put there just because of formalities, you can get over it by just paying money. But in the West, it's impossible, and it becomes a living hell. It becomes a living hell to abide by such rules. I mean, and this applies to everything, from educational systems to, I know how educational systems are limiting. They limit the human beings. You have to put your brain in a certain box so that you can succeed at school and have good grades or whatever, or to please the teacher. You know, you can't be yourself. You can't be creative, and yeah. So that's why I found it much better for me to be living in Syria. At least in Syria, the weather is much better than in Canada. At least it's much easier to commute. I can walk almost anywhere. There are parks I can go to because the weather allows me to go to a park and to sit under a tree, which is so important for me, for my sanity, you know, to just sit under a tree and to touch it with my back against it, even though it's a simple thing. Such simple things, they do wonder for our health if we really understand that. And also, yeah, so I was saying every system is corrupt, educational, medical. You know what's been coming out about vaccines, but it's not just the vaccines. Western medical system is very good for emergencies, but not like for fixing bones and so on, but it's not good for treating really a health issue, because health issues are rooted in our psychology, in our souls and hearts and minds, and you have to treat the human as a whole entity that has all those aspects within him or part of who he is, you know. You can't treat him like a machine like Western media does. So the schooling system, the medical system, of course, that's not to mention how the schooling system, especially in the West, is feeding lies to everyone. Especially the history that you study in the US or Europe. Yeah. And I think that if you have friends also, it's very important to live in a country where you have friends, because friends, I think for me, I've realized is the most important thing in life, is to have people around me who love me, who want to share their life and their things with me, their ideas and their belongings and things, just like I would do also. I would share my everything I have to give to someone if I feel connected. And I think life is about this sharing. What else did I want to say? Yeah, I also have reflected on what's happening now, and I believe that whatever I see outside of myself manifesting in the outside world is only a reflection of what's happening inside of me. It's like that for all of us. So collectively, we have manifested this thing called the State of Israel, and the situation in that Arabs surrounding it are very, very powerful because they outnumber Israelis. They far outnumber them, and yet they still can't, you know, control the issue. I'm not gonna say trigger words, although I think I already have for YouTube. It considers them to be so. Yeah, let's hope that this video stays on. Either way, um, yeah, and so as to continue what I'm saying, so I think that Israel represents the mind, and how the mind has the illusion of control over us when we do not give power to our hearts. Because Arab people have been known to be very emotional people. And I think it's very, very important to listen to our emotions. Not that we should give them, that, not that we should give our emotions the lead. We should give our consciousness, our witnessing of our emotions and our thoughts the lead in life. We should witness our emotions and how they go through our body, and we should witness also our feelings and our thoughts, and we should take a step back and separate ourselves from them to a certain degree. But we should experience them, we should be feeling them, we should be experiencing what we need to experience, the emotions we need to experience. But we also should not let this emotion drag us into an abyss. We should not let this emotion take over us completely. Otherwise, we're no different than any blind criminal, because that's what happens to criminals. First, they keep repressing emotions and becoming numb and more numb and numbing themselves, and then denying their feelings, and then suddenly they erupt. That eruption is when the emotions take control, total control over that person. And the reason is that that person is usually numb. So a kind of balance has to be struck between the two. If you keep denying something, then that something which is part of you is gonna come back from the other door, from the other side, and it's gonna come pushing, kicking and pushing strong, like a bomb. I think this is the power that each one of us have, and when we are not aware of this, of what is happening inside of us, then so criminals are simply people that aren't aware. They don't see what they're doing. They don't see how what they're doing affects others, or how it even affects them. So they are trapped in a Syrian cycle, in a certain cycle or loop, and they keep going through it, and each time they have more power than the time before it. So criminals can become more and more powerful if they go through that cycle and no one stops them. But I think we have to understand, that we have, to a certain degree, such tendencies within us if we don't become aware of how important it is for us to feel our feelings, to give them a voice, to express them, and to act accordingly to our feelings sometimes. Sometimes our feelings come to us like an intuition, a nudge. And there's a way, if you go deep into it, there's a way to know the difference between a feeling that's coming from your intuition, or a feeling that's coming from fear, a certain fear or a certain doubt. And both fear and doubt, they both are, the source of them is the mind. They both come from the mind. So whereas intuition, it comes from a very, very deeper place that is even not inside of you, and at the same time it is inside of you. It's at your very core. You can feel it in your body, but at the same time it's something greater and bigger than you, and it's that connection you have with everything around you. That's why it's called intuition, and that's why it can predict things before they happen. So I think we need to all sit with ourselves and ask ourselves, how more aware can I be? What can I do to become more aware? Yeah, and reading has helped me so much. Like on relationships, there's no one that has helped me more than John Gray and his books. He's the author of Mars and Venus. Women are from Venus and men are from Mars. At first, I didn't want to read it because it's mainstream, and when I was younger, a teenager, I thought that anything mainstream, I don't want it. I want to look for something that's not like read or shared or viewed by everyone, and I want to see it or watch it. But now it's like I look back and I think, what limiting belief is this? Because you can find inspiration everywhere, both in the mainstream and the non-mainstream, both in the mundane and the non-mundane, or whatever. I think there's nothing not mundane. Everything is mundane, and at the same time it's not. It's simple, and yet it's divine. Everything in life is like that. Like if you have a dog, you would know, just looking at your dog, how divine that dog is. Every dog owner knows, and every parent knows that about their child. And we have to see the sacredness in us and in others, and in the experiences we have. We have to cherish them, because if we don't, then we're going to be very regretful when we die and stand above our body. Our body is watching them. Yeah, so I think that's what I have to say. So to sum it up again, I think that Israel is representing something inside of us, which is like a dynamic, that is the mind, or a process, which is the mind. And how the mind, is in control, how when the mind is in control of us, it can make us, first of all, it can make us not realize how we live in a very, very corrupt society and systems functioning all around us. And this, I've never understood how people could not be aware of that. I've always felt that there was something wrong with the world, and since I was a teenager growing up, and since I've started becoming able to assess things, around me, and I've always known that I've noticed that I've had certain knowledge that to most people was not common, even though to me it felt so weird that not everyone knew what I knew. I felt that it was natural and normal for everyone to know the basic thing that I know. So that's why I thought that if I went to the West, to Canada, I had Canadian citizenship, because I was a child when went there with my parents to Canada. So I thought that if I go back as an adult, I'm gonna definitely find my, you know, what I'm looking for, what I'm going to run away from to go there. So yeah, you know what I mean. I'm gonna find what I'm looking for, what was gonna save me from the hell I was living here. And it turned out to not be true. I'm not living in a hell in Syria, because when I went to Canada, I thought this is an even bigger hell. Of course, because there is no place on earth that is a hell. Everywhere is paradise. Everywhere, every country is a paradise. And it depends on us. It depends on how we look at things. So if we want to focus on what's positive, then we will find the positive, and life is going to project more positive things to us because we're looking for the positive things and we're giving them our attention. Whereas if we don't want to do that, if we're going to focus on all the negative things like I did when I was in Syria as a teenager, and as a teenagers, I think as teenagers we all were to a certain degree not happy, unhappy with with our reality. I think that's why teenagers are rebels. We rebel when we're teenagers, but then we become indoctrinated or programmed when we're older. I don't know why though. We should still have that rebellion attitude, that rebellious attitude, or that rebellion within us, and we just have to add wisdom to it, add wisdom to rebellion, not take rebellion out of the equation. But anyways, I'm thankful that even though I also have gone through a phase where I've become more subdued, I've gained my rebellious spirit back, the will to live, my dreams, the will to dream. I want to dream. I want to have dreams, and I want to believe in them. And I want to talk about every detail of my dream, and I want to design it, and I want to create things that make me feel closer to it. So if we all do that, we're gonna send a different frequency out, and the systems will have to change. And I think we are doing that. We're being forced to do that, to look at our lives and ask questions, and that's very good. Is there anything else I want to say? Yeah, so that's all. Okay, have a nice day.